Have you ever walked through a neighborhood at night and caught a glimpse inside someone's window? A lamp lit, a picture on the wall, maybe a bookshelf or the edge of a sofa. I used to love doing this on my neighborhood walks in the evening. I wasn't being nosy, I promise. But for many years I've been fascinated by the spaces that people create, how they choose to decorate, what they surround themselves with, what makes a house feel like a home. In this video, I want to talk about just that. What does make a house feel like a home? And I'd like to talk about the idea of, is our home a reflection of us? And like most things in life, these questions and that curiosity started with my own early life. Hi, I'm Susan, and welcome to the channel. I grew up in the house that my father built in the early 1960s, when my mom was pregnant with me, the fourth child in 4 years. Before we moved into that house, our family of 6 lived in my maternal grandmother's living room in her old century home. That's something that I truly can't imagine. When I was 6 months old, we moved into that home. It was a small bungalow made from salvaged materials on a 16-acre piece of land in the country. It was very simple and very basic. A kitchen, a living room, 4 small bedrooms, and a bathroom. We didn't have much money, and our furnishings were, well, modest, to put it kindly. Absolutely no extras, just the essentials. But I didn't know any different. As a child, that was my life, and I think that was life for very many people back in the 60s. Dad worked at a major Canadian steel producer 45 minutes away. 4 kids at home, obviously Mom didn't work, and that too was the norm in the 60s. Even though the number of children was thankfully capped at 4, Mom did continue to increase her workload with her life's obsession and passion, horses. She boarded these horses at a neighbor's farm, across the field, on the other side of our 16-acre property. In fact, my very earliest memory is of Mom pulling me on the toboggan to go to the barn where her horses were boarded on very, very cold winter mornings. Within 10 years of our home being built, Dad would build a barn for Mom and all of her horses. As kids, growing up in the 60s and 70s, if many of you can remember, we spent most of our time outdoors. We were told to go out and play, come back at dark, and then go to bed. It wasn't until I began babysitting at about the age of 10 or so that I really became aware of how other people lived. I babysat on evenings and weekends. I had a customer group of about 6 to 8 families. These were newer, younger families moving into the countryside from the city, often for the peace and beauty of country life, but bringing their wealth and style with them. These homes were so different from the one that I was growing up in. Beautiful, thoughtfully decorated, closets filled with designer clothes, kitchens stocked with name brand snacks I only had previously seen on TV commercials. I was too young to be jealous, but I was fascinated. I would walk through the doors of these homes and it felt so different, so foreign from my home. The kids, though, were the same bratty hooligans, no matter how well off their parents were. But how did the woman of the home know how to place things just so? How to create that warm, comfortable elegance? How did she know which fabrics to choose, which colors, to get such a calm, beautiful style? And these homes were so incredibly clean and tidy. Our home was considered clean if we straightened up the blanket on the sofa, which hid all the tears and rips and burn holes from cigarette ashes. Those huge ashtrays from the 60s and 70s, do you remember those? Did you have them in your homes? Unbeknownst to me at the time, most of these families were connected. They belonged to the same social circle, the same wealthier class. They weren't extravagantly rich, but they weren't scraping by like we seemed to be. The more time I spent in those homes, the more I began to believe that their life, the beautiful home, the nice things, was more normal than the home that I was growing up in. And by contrast, our life at home felt different, lacking. Our home was functional, basic, serviceable. I'm not complaining, it was a roof over my head. I'd say that it was a shelter from the storm, But if any of you have seen my previous videos where I talked briefly about my childhood, the storm was within those four walls, not so much outside. It's interesting to see just how much homes have come to represent in our culture today. Back in the 1950s and 60s, during the post-war boom, a modest house with a yard was the dream. A single income could support a family. Functional furniture, maybe a china cabinet, maybe shag carpet if you were lucky. Back then, most homes weren't showpieces. They were places to live and to bring up your somewhat large family. But somewhere along the way, things changed. By the 80s and 90s, bigger became better. Open concept, granite countertops, cathedral ceilings. Magazines and later social media started showing us homes as lifestyles, aspirations, reflections of status and taste. And now we're bombarded with images of pristine, curated spaces. It's as though the house that you live in is a statement of worth, a value judgment, not just a shelter, but kind of a performance. But the truth is, a home isn't any of that. A home is where we find comfort. It's where we exhale at the end of the day. Our home reflects us, not just in our taste, but in our experiences and our values and our memories. From the very first home that I had as a young bride at the age of 22 to where I am now, I've tried my very best to make my home feel comfortable and peaceful and serene. Throughout the years, more times than not, money was tight and there was no budget for decorating. But that led to a lot of creativity and experimentation and a lot of satisfaction too. When I go through old pictures of my homes throughout the years, I always find it so interesting, if not a little cringeworthy, to see what I thought was pretty and stylish at that time. But we evolve and grow in time, and like many other facets of our personality, so does our sense of style and creativity. So yes, it's so satisfying to make our homes as comfortable and pleasing as we can. But let's also give ourselves grace, because we don't always get to choose where we live. Life brings so many changes, financial shifts, health changes, family situations, and we may very well find ourselves in a space that doesn't match what we envision and hope for in our mind. But here's the thing, it's still yours. You get to shape it, to soften its edges, to fill it with your stories, your comforts, personality, and values. It doesn't need to be dream home material to be your haven. A home is not about square footage or style trends. It's about being and feeling safe, seen, and at peace. It's your refuge, your landing place, your shelter from the storm. And that in itself is a beautiful thing. I'd love to know what makes your home feel like home. Is it a particular item, a memory, a feeling? Please leave a comment and let me know. Thank you for spending this time with me today. I'm so glad that you did. Until next time, take care of yourself and the place that you call home.